Hello, and welcome back to the Nourish with Purpose podcast. It's Bailey, and hope you're having a great Wednesday or whenever you're listening to today's episode. Just a reminder, if you would like to, you can now watch the podcast on YouTube, a new endeavor of mine, one that has actually been pretty fun, except for the fact that I have to wear these silly little headphones and I just feel really funny, but that is besides the point. What I like is that I can also have the video version of the podcast, which I just think is kind of fun. But like I said, I hope you're having a great week, a great start to your week, or a great midweek. It is really that time of the year where the weather is either really, really wonderful outside or it's really, really miserable. So if you hear anything in the background, it is probably the wind because it is frigid here. I think it said it was supposed to feel like -18 today in Nebraska, and I know some schools even canceled school because it was so cold. Not that we always have to talk about the weather, although I believe us Midwesterns really love to find ways to sneak that into every conversation. I just wanted to give that little preface, but we are really going to kind of just jump into today's episode. I feel like a lot of my catch up for today's episode has to do with the topic of today's episode, which is pregnancy support. So your lifestyle is your prenatal, what I did to personally prepare my body for pregnancy, and 3 of my most valued habits during pregnancy. I feel like I get a lot of interest and a lot of conversations that come up around pregnancy and what I did to conceive and really what I wanted to focus on health-wise when we were trying to conceive and all the things. So I'm going to hopefully answer a lot of those questions on today's episode. Again, of course, give an update about my life, personally what's happening, and kind of how my mindset is right now, especially around pregnancy, now that I'm in the later weeks and I feel like it's truly a jump scare when I look in the mirror and see my belly because I just really feel like I did before I got pregnant. And I know that is something it's always hard because I feel like this is something I've struggled with is that getting pregnant is an experience that I am so thankful for, so grateful for, that I never want to come across that I'm not appreciative of that. But at the same time, I almost feel like I've been gaslighting myself into not actually sharing the negative sides because I never want to be ignorant to the struggles that can come when you're trying to conceive and it's maybe not happening. So I've almost invalidated my own feelings because I don't want to ever seem ungrateful for the experience. That being said, that doesn't mean that I have always, felt super wonderful about what my body looks like or how it's changed so fast. But the one thing I am consistently thankful for is that my pregnancy has felt, for the most part, very much like my body has felt before pregnancy. Like I feel very normal. Quote normal, whatever normal was for me before pregnancy. And that is something I think when we hear about pregnancy, we hear about all the negatives, even, which bless this person's soul, but even at my baby shower this weekend, they're like, oh yeah, delivering a baby will be the most painful thing you ever do. But once you deliver and you see that face for the first time, it'll all be worth it. And I'm like, I know, we just really like to talk about the negatives, right? And I'm not saying birthing a child is going to be all a walk in the park. But, it's always kind of that reiterating the negatives. And I truly have very, very few negatives when it comes to how my body has felt physically. But I'm going to get into all those updates, of course, but I just kind of wanted to share on that front, what we're going to be getting into, just because I get a lot of questions around this. If this topic feels very sensitive for you right now, or something you're not ready to listen to, please understand that, of course, I understand, but also that you don't need to continue to surround yourself with the noise and the voices around pregnancy. If it's something you're struggling with, or if it's something where you've had some trauma around it, I just want to be very aware that that is the reality for a lot of people, and just put that out there that a lot of what we talk about on today's episode is going to be very pregnancy focused. And I want to be obviously put that out in the open. But let's get into really quickly here the segment of how I'm nourishing my mind, body, and spirit, which is a segment I do every single week just to kind of reiterate that we have to find that balance and that support in all three areas in order to achieve what I view as true wellness. This doesn't mean we're always going to feel perfect or super strong in all three areas, but I do think that when it comes to creating focuses for the week, goals around our health, we have to consider our mind, our body, physical body, and our spirit. So how I've been nourishing my mind recently has been reading through, it's called The Guide to Birth by Dr. Molly. I believe her last name is Patura. Patura, I think. And what I really like about this guide is that it gives you a more, holistic view of birth and the experience that the mother goes through actually during birth. Rather than just thinking, of it as a medical procedure, we're thinking about it as a transformation. So they talk a lot about going from the maiden to the matron, right? We're going from being somebody who has never had a baby physically to now being a mother. And it just is kind of that process, right? And it talks about different positions for birth and doing different, if you want to do epidural or without an epidural, it gives you different perspectives, and also how you could kind of instigate birth to happen if you are past that 42 to 43 week window. Some different holistic, again, traditional, I would say like Eastern medicine ways to do that, how you could birth at home. And it just, like I said, it gives you kind of a broad scope. So I really have liked that because for me, I feel like I'm somebody who likes to be prepared, but I don't really want to be over prepared or psych myself out by being or expecting something specific to happen during labor. And really, I know a lot of my midwives have been like, hey, have you done like a birthing class yet? And I know for me, because the experience that I am hoping to have is different from maybe what you would see in a very traditional hospital setting. And this is not a criticism of doing that. For me, I just know I want something a little different. And if I'm able to, I want that to be my experience. And so I think I really just struggle going into birthing classes within the hospital setting, knowing that my birthing position could look different. My birthing, just how I approach it might be a little different. And so I've really tried to immerse myself in reading books and learning a lot more by reading and looking at different visuals of, like I said, if you're not going to use an epidural, ways that you can position yourself because you have that function of your lower body to move around, get on all fours, or to be in the bathtub, or there's just some different ways you can approach it. And so that's really what I've been doing, and I've really liked that birthing guide because it's felt very aligned with what, again, I'm hoping to have during labor, the experience I'm hoping to have, and how I can also prepare my body to make that experience realistic for me and doable for me, how to manage pain in a way without the use of, like I said, an epidural, and some breathing techniques and practices to implement during that phase of labor. So I've really liked that. It's made me feel a lot more at ease about the whole experience because, like I said, I think we could learn as much as we want to, but sometimes you can't control what the experience is like. So it's more so just giving me ideas on how to be prepared for maybe questions I'll get, or if things go a certain way, what my next option is, and just have a better understanding. I think that's something that I think I've shared this on previous episodes. I've never actually watched somebody give birth. Like in 5th and 6th grade, we did not have sex education. We did not watch somebody deliver a baby. My husband did when he was in like junior high. I'm like, I've never watched that. So now it's like, okay, I probably should watch at least some births to have an idea of what this experience could be like, but I've just never really been exposed to that. So it's kind of exposing myself in a way that feels comfortable for me, which has been really going through that guide and following her also on Instagram and some of her other resources that have been really helpful for just understanding more about labor and delivery. Okay, then how I'm nourishing my body is walking right when I wake up in the morning. I feel so much better when I do this because I sit for a lot of the day, for sure from about like probably 9 to 5 p.m. some days. I'm pretty sedentary and I'm working on my computer, doing that sort of thing. So to get in like a good hour, 45 minute to an hour walk and some stretching after I eat breakfast in the morning has been just really enjoyable and a great way for me to put that, 60-minute time frame into my own physical health to support my body so that I can adequately support people throughout the day through my job. And then my spirit. So Nathan and I have actually been working through a daily, we did first the journey of Jesus and now it's the journey of Paul, but it's supposed to be kind of that year, reading the year in a Bible process. I will say we have not been perfect with doing this every single day, but we have tried to at least sit down together in the mornings to go through this. So it really gives you about like one book of the Bible to read every day for kind of like 2-week spurts, and then it brings you into reading the Bible a little bit more in depth. But it's really cool how it's been formatted. We have a study Bible, and that, I believe it's through NIV, and that has been really nice. I didn't know they had plans in there. One of my goals this year was to read the Bible in a year, and I feel like that should feel very realistic, but at the same time, I was thinking, I'm like, what's the deeper goal there? Like, what's the purpose behind that? It's not just to say I've read the Bible in a year, but it's because I want to better understand the Bible and I want to better understand, what certain verses are actually talking about and the whole backstory behind certain verses, like we always hear, like I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. We hear that, right? But like, what's the full story behind that specific verse? And so it's just kind of having that knowledge. And so I've realized I don't really need to force or push myself to read the Bible in the year. Really, I just want to understand and have discussion around the Bible so that it sticks and that I can remember what I'm learning and really kind of have a timeline of like the life of Jesus, the life of Paul, and just kind of work up from there. So that has been something I've really enjoyed. All right, so getting into pregnancy, I wanted to give you some updates. I know I kind of entered into the episode with giving some updates, but I wanted to just share what we're doing, kind of a little backstory behind how we're approaching this and the people we're working with. So we've been working through a midwife clinic. At the midwife clinic, they used to be able to deliver babies there, and now they send you to a hospital. So I will be having a hospital delivery, hopefully without the use of an epidural. The only reason I say hopefully is because I do have those fractures in my L4, L5 vertebrae and a bulging disc. And so I am open to the idea if there were to be some extreme discomfort that would come from that injury that's already existent in my body. But otherwise, I'm kind of thinking about like writing out a birth plan, really thinking more specifically around what I want the environment to look like, because the hospital knows that I'm coming from a midwife clinic. They try to kind of abide by like how the midwives would have delivered in that setting and mimic something to the effect in the hospital. So we've been working with midwives. Now we're at every 2-week appointment, which kind of, honestly, I'm going to be very transparent, feels, I shouldn't say like a waste of time, but a little bit like that, because really nothing has changed since we've been going every 4 weeks, and now we're every 2 weeks, and it feels like a lot of times to go and see somebody to have kind of the same conversation. Not to say we haven't had a good experience, but I was telling Nathan, I'm like, I think next time, and it's hard because the birthing options in Nebraska are a little bit tricky. A lot of like having a home birth or having any medical professional in your home while you birth at home could help, like they could lose their license because of it. Like there's some pretty extreme rules around that in Nebraska, which obviously there's reason for some of that. But with this, I'm like, I really feel like I could go to my 10-week appointment, make sure that there's legit a baby in my stomach, because I feel like at the 10-week appointment, when I had called to make an appointment initially and they're like, okay, you can come in about 10 weeks. I'm like, what if they do an ultrasound and there's nothing in there? And I've just like convinced myself I was pregnant and I wasn't. So having that 10-week appointment, I do really like, just because I like to see the baby move, see the baby kick. And then I'm like, I feel like I could go back in maybe for like that 21-week 4D ultrasound or anatomy scan. And again, check up on the baby, look at lung function, look at development, look at size, look at measurements. And then really I feel like I could maybe go to the hospital to deliver a baby. And I'm not saying that is what we would do next time, but I think because I've taken some of the responsibility to do research on my own and read books on my own and to support my body in the ways that I'm going to talk about on today's episode, so that I don't really have any like really pressing questions or really pressing concerns. Luckily, again, I say that with a very grateful heart and with a lot of appreciation that I'm able to say that. But yeah, I'm like, I don't know if we really need to be going every 2 weeks, but I understand they want to make sure things are fine. They want to measure the size of the baby and the position of the baby, because that's also important for delivery. We also have gotten questions around like, have you decided on a name yet? And right now I'm at 32 weeks, and Nathan has always told me, he's like, by the beginning of March, we can really like kind of set a name. But before that, he doesn't want to like commit to anything. But we will go through lists on Instagram. There's always like those lists that come out of like, I don't know, trendy boy names or cool boy names or Western boy names. And I read through it and I'm like, I just feel no connection to these names. Like I feel connection to one name. One first name, middle name, and then of course our last name is Seaton. And so I'm like, I just feel such a connection to that name. Like it just feels right. And I'm going to cling to that unless there was another name that would come up. But really, for the most part, I don't want to say we've decided on a name, but we're really leaning towards one specific name. And other updates, I had my baby shower this last weekend, and so got to see friends and family and truly feel very celebrated and very overwhelmed with the generosity of people. I'm very much a quality time person, but where we live, I feel like I don't see a lot of people very often. I would say I'm probably an hour to 2 hours from some of my closest friends. And so I don't see them very often, but a lot of them made the drive to the shower, and that just meant a lot. Family came that I wasn't expecting to see. That, of course, meant a lot. I feel like I got very emotional just at like I said, the generosity and the fact that people dedicated time to come and celebrate this experience just meant a lot to me. And I realized that kind of as I get older, how valuable quality time is to me, and when people can both like mutually plan things, but I also obviously then am responsible for planning things. When people show up for me, it just really hits close to home on a different level, more so than even the gifts, which that again, I was so overwhelmed with the gifts. I'm like, people are just so kind, and it was fun to just have that morning with people that I love, people that are close to me, and my aunts put that on, and it was just perfect. It was very, very, like I couldn't have planned it better myself. It was just perfect, and yeah, very much appreciated everything. The food was wonderful, and we got to play some games. I told people, I'm like, if you have any name suggestions, like write those down on your paper, because we're always open to suggestions. And because, like I said, we've got one name that we're pretty much leaning towards, I just want to make sure it is the most perfect name for this little human that I'm going to be having, and that it just fits him really well. All right, so let's get into how your lifestyle is your prenatal. And I got this, honestly, I really love the Village Sessions podcast. If you've never heard of that or listened to those, some of them are a little out there, I will say, and sometimes how they talk is a little bit disconnected from like my typical verbiage or language, just because I would say they are very, I don't even know how you would explain it. They're very holistic in the sense of very much like about the mind and the spirit, and then also connecting that to the body, which is what I do. I just feel like they talk about it a little bit differently. They have some different verbiage, and that's actually one of the gals on that podcast is the one who wrote the guide to birth, which is the guide I'm working through. But again, sometimes the language is just a little bit different. But I got a lot of the inspiration to talk about this from that podcast episode, because it fit or it hit very close to home, and it felt very aligned with a lot of my own personal beliefs. I want to preface this also by saying I am not a fertility expert, and I will never, ever, ever claim to be. There are instances where you could do every single thing, quote, right, and still maybe experience some difficulty getting pregnant. And that's where I just want to be very sensitive to that and let you know that this is not saying if you do every single thing that I say, you will conceive. I will never claim to have that power, but I do think a lot of these things can be really valuable to add in or at least consider when you are wanting to have a baby or when you enter into that season of life. So kind of starting out with what I've seen with labs, seeing, the hormone levels and thyroid levels and the liver function and, really looking at what I wanted to do to support specifically those three systems of my body. That's kind of how I'm approaching this conversation. I think blood work is so crucial, and I'll talk about it a few times on today's episode because it is so valuable, and getting blood work read functionally is so, so valuable. Not saying, and how I always kind of preface this too, or to explain this, when you get blood work done at your primary care doctor, they are using reference ranges that are really just making sure that you don't have any chronic health issues, that there's not anything that's super, super alarming. And really, like in the emergency room setting, they're looking at like hydration levels, things like that to keep you alive. When I look at blood work from a functional medicine perspective and use some different functional ranges, it is because I know this person is alive and well. I know they've also been talking to their doctor, and their doctor has kind of cleared them to continue to live life as usual, but they don't feel quite normal. They don't feel right. They maybe feel a little bit off, or maybe even they've tried to conceive, but nothing has worked. And that is when looking at things very, very critically can be very, very helpful. So especially like with the function of your hormones and your thyroid, that is going to be very important to make sure that those levels and those ranges are in a very typical range, right? Or a normal range, because that can obviously contribute to fertility and just your body's ability to conceive. And so really what I did prior to looking at blood work though, is I thought about the systems of my body that were responsible for those hormones. So for me, it kind of always came back to my liver. I think when I was in college, I was just actually having this conversation with a client I was on a call with before I recorded this episode, and we were talking about how in your younger years, you might, drink alcohol in excess or eat whatever you want because your metabolism is still super efficient, and you might not notice any health concerns. Or maybe you get on birth control because, you're trying not to conceive, or you're doing it for acne reasons, or there's whatever reason that you've been put on something like that, or any sort of medication. Like for me, it was pain medication. You just don't think about the impact that is maybe having on other organs in your body. And so for me, again, it kind of like linked it back to liver. When I finally understood the value and the importance of your liver, I started respecting it a lot more. And this is not to say I've done this perfectly, but I think a big thing that I did just with my overall lifestyle was reducing alcohol consumption. Knowing that, your liver is very much impacted by consuming alcohol. If you're then not supporting your body the day after or the 2 days after you consume alcohol, and it's just kind of that pattern of consumption, then maybe you have a day where you don't drink, but you lay in bed all day and order takeout. I've been there. I've seen that. Obviously, like I went through college too. I went through those years of my life as well. But that pattern is really, really having an impact on your liver. So when we decided we wanted to have kids, and I feel like this kind of started honestly when I went through my whole health journey anyway, I shouldn't say my whole health journey because it's still a continuous journey. But when I really wanted to focus on supporting my body in the best way I could without the use of medication, I won't get into my full personal story, but I wanted to take a more holistic approach to how I was handling and managing pain. And so I really then noticed the effect that alcohol had on my body, just in the sense of inflammation, like how puffy my face felt, how much my back hurt the next day, how sore my joints were. And I was like, this isn't normal. Like, feeling this way after you consume something should not be normalized. And I wholeheartedly believe that. Like, it should not be something that we just socially accept that it's normal to overconsume alcohol. And so for sure within the first 2 years of our marriage, I really minimized any consumption of alcohol. And I would say maybe in the 6 months leading up to when we were finally like, yes, we want to try to have a baby, I maybe drank one time. Like, I really don't even recall drinking at all. And again, because I wanted to support my liver, because I know how valuable that function is in my body. And I just continue to learn more about the liver that makes me put even more of an emphasis on how I can support the liver emotionally and physically. The second piece of this was consuming more calories on a day-to-day basis. I really went through that period of life where I chronically counted calories and I underate. And although maybe I really did appreciate the appearance of my physical body at that point in time, I know that my body was not getting the support it needed because I lost my period for about 6 months. And any time that you're not getting your period consistently or it's extremely irregular, that is a signal that your body is under a certain amount of stress, right? Your body needs some support. Your period is a great way to tell how safe your body feels. And at that point in time, my body did not feel safe. And I don't think if we would have tried to conceive within that window of time, it would have happened because my body felt very unsafe. And so I knew that I needed to increase calories. This also then required me to evaluate my relationship with food and no longer view food as something that was going to immediately cause weight if I ate too much or cause weight gain if I ate too much, but rather view food as something that is a tool used to heal your body and to correct imbalances in your body. And so I really increased the consumption of healthy fats. There was periods of time where I wouldn't buy peanut butter because I had no self-control around peanut butter, and I swore that that was the reason that I didn't like how I looked when I looked in the mirror because I was consuming fat. And it was that understanding that healthy fats does not equal fat stored in your body. And even if it does, like I will say I noticed changes in my hip structure when I got my period back. My hips were maybe a little bit wider, my thighs were a little bit bigger in size, right? But it's because I did the mindset work in conjunction with increasing calories that I think I was able to, have that physical change in my body without so much criticism that I probably would have had for it in the past. And so again, I think getting my period back was a huge step. And the reason or the way that I feel like I was able to do that efficiently was increasing fats, also reducing any extra strain on my body that was happening through exercise and over-exercising. So kind of coming off of that or playing off of that was really this focus on building strength within my core and my pelvic floor area. Because I have a low back injury, I knew that that was an area, right? The counteracting muscles needed to be strong. This is something I was told by doctors at the age of 18 needed to be strong in order to carry a baby with minimal pain, especially when I was working with the Nebraska Pain and Spine Center in Omaha. That was really when that conversation came up, even around surgery, right? Like, not that they've necessarily pushed surgery. My initial doctor did and was like, well, if you want to conceive or have a child in the future, right, you should really think about how we can support your back so that, that isn't a very uncomfortable period of time. And so now sitting here knowing I've never had surgery and I have honestly no low back pain, my discomfort is more so in my mid back, but my low back is totally fine. And the way that I think I was able to do that is, like I've said many times, a variety of reasons. A huge reason is because I actually understood my anatomy and what needed to be strong if another area was going to be weak. So if you ever have an injury in a specific area, you want to think about the muscle, the opposite muscle or the opposing muscle, and work on strengthening that. So for me, that was my core and my pelvic floor. I noticed huge improvements with this. Even my posture changed, the appearance of it changed, and I really just wanted to make my womb a safe space for a child to be in. And sometimes, again, like I said, due to injuries, it's not always possible to change the structure, but I wanted to make sure that I had muscles to support the structure. And that was I think that made a huge difference for conceiving, but also supporting my body now during pregnancy. And those are things that I consistently try to work on increasing the strength of and the relaxation of, because those muscles also have to relax when you deliver. All right, and then finally here was evaluating what my role would be as a mother and finally feeling comfortable stepping into that role emotionally. Now, I will tell you, I've never been a kid person and I've never been a baby person. If you show me a photo of a baby freshly out of the womb and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a really cute baby, please know that is like that's a compliment, because I don't often really think that babies are all that cute. Don't come for me. But I really also don't feel a lot of like adoration or desire to like spend time with kids. I just don't. And I won't expect that of anybody else with my kid either. Because I'm like, I get it. Like, if you see my kid and you don't think they're cute, you don't have to say, oh, they are the cutest thing I've ever seen. Like, it's okay. Or if you don't want to hold my baby, that's totally fine. I will keep them to myself and you don't have to feel pressure to hold them. Which I think is where I always thought I'd get to this point in life where I was like, finally felt ready to be a mom. And I was talking to my mom about this before, and I like still don't think I feel that way. Like, I really want to be a mother and I will love and cherish my child, but it's not like I see everybody's kids and want a ton of kids. Like, it's just a different, I don't know. I wouldn't say I ever got to, I've never been that person to just be obsessed with kids. I'll just say that. But I think what needed to happen before we entered into this phase of like, okay, we've been married for about 3 years. You know, we're not getting any younger. We know we maybe want to have this amount of kids. We should at least think about it. We should start trying. I think financially and environmentally, we are in a position to do this. And so we made that decision. And I also, throughout making that decision, had to accept some things that would change about me personally. As the mother, typically we become that like primary caretaker of our child. And with having the job that I have flexibility, but it's also something I've spent 3 years building, is my business Divine Purpose, my integrative health coaching business and blood work consultations. And I've spent so much time creating this and wanting to see it flourish and to get to a point where I feel like I can say that my business is really flourishing. It is hard to then picture adding in a child into the setting, right? But it's something I've accepted and something that Nathan and I had a conversation around, right? Of like, his job is not going to change. He works for somebody else. He has a little less flexibility, although has a lot of flexibility. So a lot of that falls on me. And so that's kind of why we waited until, of course, we both felt ready, but I think also I felt ready to sacrifice that piece of me. Not saying I will never work again or not work on my business, but my business will just look different after I have a child. And I've accepted that and I'm really okay with that. And it's a sacrifice that I want to make for my child because I do want to be able to take care of them most of the time. And not have to send them to daycare, although there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm grateful that I will get the opportunity to raise my child within my home and for the most part be the one who's with them most of the time. But it took some acceptance, and I think when we emotionally, even if it's subconsciously, aren't prepared or aren't fully believing that we are ready for that, our body might, I don't want to say might not allow pregnancy to happen because I don't fully believe that. But I think if there's hesitation, right, it's almost like, well, is this really what I want? And sometimes people have babies without even planning, without a single plan in the world, without trying. And there's always going to be those fluke instances. I'm very much a planner. So like, I knew for me and for my body to, especially my mind, to be willing to go through the changes that I knew it would see physically, I needed to have a plan in place. I needed to, for the most part, as much as I could, control both how I was treating my body to set it up for success when we did start trying to conceive, but also at the same time be ready when that test became positive to accept that my role now is to be a mom. Like, I really wanted to be in that stage and in that mindset to accept that. And I feel like I did get there. And I feel like something that has really happened for the first time, I mean, not the first time now, within the last couple of years, is I also finally felt very safe in my environment since being in high school. Growing up, of course, I felt very safe in my environment. My parents did a really good job of that. But then you go through those seasons where you live in multiple different places every single year. I know the summer before we got married, my stuff was in like 5 different locations. I had very little stability. I didn't have a job until October of the year we got married. I was living in a new city. I was going through some struggles with my own mental health, and I just never truly felt safe in both my physical environment, but also my internal environment. And so moving to where we live now, I think was really big for me to feel like I actually align with the person that I am and the person that I portray to others. I don't feel like the same person I was in college in any sense of the word, or even in high school. My husband has done, not that he's actively tried to make me a calmer person, but like his presence is just calming. And now that we live pretty secluded from people and live on a farm and we have chickens and we can be outside, I really feel like my whole temperament has just come down a few notches, and that I really just am very secure in myself and secure in my body and secure in my environment. And the last piece that I wanted to talk about here emotionally, and how your emotional health can play into a way to support your body as you try to conceive, is recognizing the patterns of, previous stressors, or recognizing the patterns that previous stressors have had on your body, again, both emotionally and physically. So like for me, with struggling with body dysmorphia, I would say probably since like 4th grade. I mean, if I think back to it, I can remember moments in 1st grade when I would look at my friends' legs when we were sitting on the floor and be like, why are my legs so much bigger than my friends' legs? And I was in 1st grade. And not that I necessarily maybe saw my body as bigger than it was at that point, but I think that definitely progressed like about as early as 4th grade. And so it's something that I know I have struggled with for a majority of my life. And the thing about pregnancy is that your body changes so rapidly. I mean, within 40 weeks, you go from looking like you did before you got pregnant to looking, I mean, how do you even explain it, right? Like your belly sticks out, none of your clothes fit you. I mean, it's hard. And I went through a period of weight gain in college, and that was really, really hard on me. And I felt very, very uncomfortable in my skin and in my body, and very embarrassed about the weight gain. And then when I actively worked to, lose weight, now to be back in a season where you are pretty consistently gaining weight because you're growing a child, like that just takes a lot of preparation. And I think, again, I've almost disregarded my own emotions around my body during pregnancy because I've always wanted to appear very grateful and thankful for the opportunity to carry a child, that I've ignored maybe some of the more negative pieces or the negative thoughts that I've had during pregnancy around my body. And I would say for the most part, especially when we made the decision to start trying, I was very much like, I am totally fine. I feel very secure in my body. I feel very secure in my eating habits and my exercise habits. And I am ready for whatever changes my body is about to make. And I would say that was true until I hit about the 3rd trimester. And I was like, it is a jump scare to see myself in photos. Like, you look in the mirror and you see one thing. Or there was one day I was making the bed and my belly was like covered because I had a blanket over it and I was just putting things. And then I looked in the mirror and I turned to the side and my stomach was just out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like from the chest up, I look like the exact same person. And then from the chest down, it's not me. Like there's almost like that disconnection of like, this is my body, but it doesn't feel like my body, especially when like symptom wise, I don't feel any different than I did before I got pregnant. I'm like, what the heck? Like, how is this body changed like this? And I feel the same. Like, it's just it's a trip. It is a trip. And I'm very grateful to have people around me that are very complimentary and are like, oh, you look so good during pregnancy and you're still glowing. And I'm like, okay, well, thank you for the compliments. I hope you mean them. But there's also those moments where like you see someone, they're like, oh, you're really growing. And I'm like, oh, so like, what do I look like? You know, if you have ever struggled with body dysmorphia, or even just, I think women in general, sometimes we have a hard time understanding what our bodies even look like, and men included. I don't want to uninclude them because I know that they struggle with similar things too. But if you always have kind of like questioned what your body looks like anyway, to have your body look so extremely different than it did let's say 32 weeks ago, it is really difficult to actually know what your body looks like. Like I truthfully don't know what my body looks like. I see one photo and I'm like, okay, that's what I look like. And then I look at another photo, I'm like, oh, that looks way different than what I thought that I looked like. Then you look in the mirror and you look way different than what you think you look like. And it's a part of pregnancy because your body is changing so rapidly. But I've also always just struggled understanding the appearance of my body. But I think for me, I've got to get readjusted here. I think for me, again, having the growth that I did around comfortability in my body and, like I will say, comfortability around my environment really made a big difference to prepare me to enter now into pregnancy and not feel super self-conscious around my appearance or very embarrassed around my appearance, and understand that this is a short-term that this is a short-term phase of my life, but it's a very incredible phase, and that it's something that, you know, I will look back on and be so grateful for. So I will say I've not always felt the most mentally stable maybe in my appearance, or even felt very good about myself and my appearance, but I also am entering and did enter into pregnancy in a much better headspace than I could say I had about 2 to 4 years ago. And a lot of that came with just understanding that this body is a vessel, and it's something that God gave us to take care of. And when I started actually taking care of my body, not just doing the things that I thought were trendy and would make me look a certain way, but actually physically feel a certain way and emotionally accept and understand how cool it is that we were given a body to take care of, and how that's not something I wanted to take lightly anymore, I looked at my body in a much different light and wanted to just take care of it. Like, I wanted to take care of it, and I didn't want to constantly feel like I was looking in the mirror and hating what I saw. Like, I was so over that, and I was so exhausted from that, and I was so drained from that. And so with time and with a lot of help from other people, I did work to reach a point where, like I said, it's not always perfect, but I feel like I'm in a much better space right now than I ever have been, even though there are challenges that have come with looking at my body and again, kind of that rapid change that has come from pregnancy. Okay, so then what are 3 of my most valued habits during pregnancy? I'm coming back to this because it was huge for me, and I didn't really understand the value of it until I did it, and that is blood work. In my opinion, that is crucial for knowing exactly what your body needs during pregnancy. So what I did is I got my blood work done around week, I think it was 12 of pregnancy. I had already had an appointment with my doctor or with my midwife, and they ran blood work there just to make sure everything was good. And in their ranges, everything was fine, right? But then I critically looked at my blood work to see what my hydration looked like. So sodium and potassium and magnesium, what vitamin D levels were, what my B vitamin need was, and wanted to make sure that my body was getting what it needed to fulfill any deficiencies that I saw in labs. So for me, I knew that B vitamins are really big for both fertility, but also for that development of the baby, of overall hormone support and thyroid support. And so I added in a beef liver supplement. I've just never been one that wanted to take a general prenatal just to cover all my bases, because they put a lot of things in prenatals, and that's not to say maybe people's bodies or women's bodies don't need everything they put in that prenatal, but I wanted to know specifically, like, do I need what I can get, like what can I get from the beef liver supplement to fulfill certain areas of those deficiencies, or what environmental exposures was I having that was affecting my blood work. So identifying mold in our household and just my body's way to feel supported, even though, during pregnancy, you can't do a lot of like detox protocols, which I wouldn't really recommend anyway, but there's some supplements that you just can't take during pregnancy that I would put clients on if they were exposed to mold consistently. And so it was navigating that and getting on PC by Body Bio for just overall brain and nervous system support while living in an environment that I had some of those exposures to, or just in general to support mine and baby's brain and nervous system development. That was really important to me, right? So it's identifying, yes, what your blood work says, but also identifying like, what do you want to do to support your body, and what does your body actually need to be supported on a cellular level, or what organs are really being under a lot of stress that need some support. And so again, blood work was really big for that. And now, I was the first blood work I ever read, because now that I'm able to look at blood work and look at labs, I've just gotten more experienced with it, but my labs were the first labs I ever looked at. I'm like, I'm a great test subject, and it was a great way just to navigate, like, what am I actually looking at when I look at labs, and what does my body need? So I've gone back and re-looked at it since then to see, okay, now later in pregnancy, although I really am about at that time where I need to get labs drawn again, or have my midwife send me my most recent labs so I can look at those labs again. Again, it's like, okay, am I still on track? Am I still consistently doing these things that my body needs? So again, like I said, beef liver and PC by Body Bio are the only two supplements that I am taking. I'm not taking a prenatal. I also think food can serve as your prenatal. Nutrition for Fertility or Nutrition for Pregnancy are two books I highly, highly recommend when it comes to, both areas, right? If you're trying to get pregnant, or if you are pregnant and you want to minimize any negative symptoms, or you just want to make sure your body has that general level of support, I think nutrition is something we can't under acknowledge, because there is so much that you can get just from eating adequate amounts of protein, which is why that is my second thing, is that protein should become your best friend during pregnancy. And this is something that, of course, I knew, and I'm sure you probably know, but how often do we actively track and make sure we are doing what we need to do? And so I did my protein calculation to see how much my body needed based on my weight as it's changed throughout pregnancy. I still don't have an understanding. I still don't weigh myself consistently. I really don't know how much I've weighed. I feel like I'm very in tune with my body in the sense of I know probably what ranges I'm at right now, or how much I've gained in general during pregnancy. But I've kind of adjusted that amount to be about 1 gram of protein per pound body weight. And that is because I would say I'm pretty moderate to highly active, tend to be probably more so highly active, at least when I can be, but I know there are definitely days when I sit way more than I would like to. So that's just the calculation that I did, 1 gram per pound body weight. And so that's going to change throughout pregnancy, but what I will say is that until I figured this out, I felt very ill. And I think nausea is one of those things that either some people really have and they really experience it, or they really maybe don't, depending on how they're supporting their body or genetics. I've heard many different reasons why this is, but I really think it comes down to deficiencies and a lack of nutrients. Oftentimes, that's what I can say for myself. Probably 7 through 9 was pretty brutal for me with nausea until I figured out week 10, Bailey, you are not eating until you feel hungry, and that's your problem. And it was my problem. I would wake up and I would be like, well, I'm not really that hungry, so I'm not going to eat. Then when I finally did eat something and that hit my system, I was sick, and it came right back up. And that really set the tone for my entire day. And so when I learned that if I eat before I'm actually hungry, so like probably about the first 5 minutes that I got out of bed, I would have breakfast. And this until probably about halfway through my second trimester, I had been doing 2 breakfasts every day because I never wanted my body to get to the point where I was overly hungry, because I knew if I waited till I was overly hungry, I would probably, I don't want to get graphic, but it would all just come back up. And so I would, within 5 minutes waking up, excuse me, like stumbling on my words, I would have a source of protein. So typically this is like a Greek yogurt bowl, or I would do overnight oats, or a smoothie, or eggs, and I would have that right away. And something super high in protein. The thing you notice during pregnancy is that you really want carbs in those first probably 25 weeks. And we have to think about what the role of carbs are, right? Carbs are energy. Starchy carbs are energy. So if your body is trying to give you energy to get through the day, or to literally grow a person, you need energy. So it makes sense why you crave crackers or you crave bread. But long term, you're not going to feel very good throughout the day if that is the first thing that hits your system. I remember my first midwife appointment, the nurse, and this is not a diss on her or anything that she shared with me, because she's been great. But she was like, just a reminder, like if you feel nauseous, to have some crackers by your bed. And I wanted to scream like, no, you should not have crackers by your bed. You should have some beef sticks by your bed, or have your husband make you a protein shake, or have some chocolate milk by your bed. Like, no, like don't tell people that. Again, everybody has their own opinions on that topic, but no, protein. Protein is what your body needs right away. When I made this change, I felt like a completely different human. I'm telling you, for 3 weeks, I'm like, Mom, I don't know why people do this more than once, because it's absolutely miserable. Like, people willingly want to have more kids after they experience this level of nausea. Like, I can't fathom. And then you start implementing the foundations, which one of the foundations is adequate amounts of protein. And I was a new person. I had energy. I didn't want to sleep all day. I didn't feel horrible the rest of the day. My complexion improved. My overall, I feel like, glow of my skin improved. I was just very depleted for a period of time because I didn't understand the value of protein. And I think it's easy, or it's hard to not be judgmental now looking back, because I'm like, duh, Bailey. Like, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you actively practice that? Why didn't you get through the mindset block that you had of that you shouldn't eat more than 1 breakfast and just eat 2 breakfasts because your body needed it? I mean, I would say I probably had 1,000 calories until like before that, I don't know, 1 p.m. mark. Like, I really, really loaded up on the food in the morning, and then the rest of my day kind of balanced out to be, eating more food than usual, but definitely not eating for 2, because that's a myth. You really just need about 200 to 400 more calories. I think maybe that's more of that emotional, like you're finally giving your body the freedom to eat what you want, which is a whole other conversation, and a very valid conversation feeling to have. But at the same time, from a structural level, you really just need about that 200 to 400 more calories. And so I wasn't necessarily overdoing it, but I knew in the morning I was going to overdo it because I didn't want to feel sick in the morning, because that would throw off my entire day, and it really did. So protein, again, like I said, is your BFF. Figure out how much your body needs based off of your activity level and go from there, because that can be a really great place to start. And then the third thing, and I hate this phrase, but when I was typing it up in my notes, I'm like, yeah, we're just going to say it. Motion is lotion, folks. So moving your body can help so much during pregnancy, especially when you start before you conceive. So having movement be a consistent part of your daily routine is so crucial to, I really believe, how you feel during pregnancy. Like I talked about, having a low back injury, I wanted to make sure my core and my pelvic floor was strong, but I wanted overall strength in my body, especially knowing postpartum, you've got 6 or more weeks that you're really not supposed to do much, but let your body heal and recover, which is a valuable and a very sacred space and time. But you're not going to be exercising. So I think when I see or hear even people around me that are going to be moms, they're like, well, after I deliver, after that 6 weeks, I'm really going to hit it hard, and I really want to get my body back to where it was before I had a baby. And for me, I've taken kind of that reverse approach of I want my body to feel strong and supported during pregnancy, before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and then into labor, knowing that if those muscles are strong, I'm going to hopefully have an easier time or even just be able to handle the pain, because it's not like I hadn't experienced physical pain through exercise. Not that exercise should always be painful, but I really do like to push myself, right? And so I've built up kind of that like mental stamina and that strength and that determination. And I think that really will help with delivery. Also with like some of that hip discomfort that can come during pregnancy, doing strength training has been huge. I mentioned this on previous episodes, but my brother knows a lot about exercise and strength training. And so I had him write me a plan for literally focused around building strength during pregnancy. What needs to go in combination with that, of course, is that protein intake, but building strength. So having a program that would be challenging me and pushing me, and I'm going up in the weights that I'm using, and I'm really getting very strong, and I still have the energy and excitement and determination around doing that consistently at 32 weeks. And that's something I don't say to brag, because I know that's not everybody's experience, but for me, moving my body and having had done that since we were even trying, I've been doing that now probably for the last, 5 years. I've consistently exercised probably 5 times a week. And that is just such at least a difference that I feel. And I know now, you get into the 3rd trimester, it's like, okay, you're not really supposed to sleep on your back. You're supposed to sleep on your side. And at first I was having some hip discomfort, and I'm not going to say every night is always super pleasant, because sometimes I wake up or I roll over and I'm like, gosh, I hate sleeping on my side. I'm a back sleeper. And so sleeping on my side's not for me. But when I then integrated that strength program, which is probably about 24 weeks pregnant, is when I did that, 24 to 28 weeks maybe, is when I started doing that. I noticed a lack of discomfort. When I added in stretching, a lack of discomfort in my hips. Same when it comes to like the placement of your baby. When you are active and you're moving, you want to have that head down position. And there's a lot of things that they can do if they are not head down. But for me, baby's position right now is looking really, really good. And I think a lot of that has to do because I'm walking, because I'm strengthening my core, because I'm doing that 360 breath work. And I think sometimes when we give so much credit to these things, it's almost like, well, yeah, that's my experience, right? I can't claim that's going to be everybody's experience. But I also don't want to invalidate this. There was such little conversation around any of these 3 things when I went even to my midwife clinic, and something that was never talked to me about there, and it still hasn't been. Other than I did have one nurse when I was there ask if I exercise, and I'm like, yep, I exercise about 5 times a week. I do strength training and I like to walk. And she's like, keep moving. Like the belief that if you haven't started exercising before pregnancy that you can't start during pregnancy is no longer true. She's like, continue to move your body, especially being pregnant during the winter. And as that center of gravity changes, you want to be able to walk on ice and on snow and feel very secure. She's like, keep exercising. And I really admired that. And I'm like, I wish there was just more conversation around this, because if I wouldn't have known some of these things through education I got in college and then post-college and done my own research once I found out I was pregnant, I really would have no idea about these 3 things. And I could have added so much more to this list that I have done that has helped, but I would say these are the 3 major things. And I just want to reiterate their importance. I'm not here to say that I'm not an expert, and I'm not here to say that this will make you feel 100% perfect throughout your entire pregnancy or help you conceive. Like I said, I'm not a fertility expert, but just to reiterate some of those basics that we just don't think about, or maybe we don't hear when we go to the doctor's office or a midwife clinic after finding out you're pregnant. And they've made such a huge difference for me and just overall feeling very good during pregnancy. And so this is something I definitely want to kind of expand on. Again, I feel like I'm very how many times am I going to say this? I want to just be very sensitive to pregnancy and understand that it is not the same experience for every single person. Also understand that you could do every single thing right and have things maybe not go exactly how they were planned to go. And so for me, I think, I want to continue to expand on this conversation and talk more about it as I learn, because I'm always learning as well. And I really can't give any input about labor and delivery because I know only what I've read about it. So again, it's kind of like explaining what I've experienced as I experience it, and then as I reflect, sharing it with you, and then as I, like I said, especially with like labor and delivery, as I experience that and as I reflect on that experience, then opening up and sharing it with you. So I'm kind of like trying to be one step ahead of what I share so that when I reflect, I can then publicly share my experience, just because I don't want to sound ignorant or unaware of the fact that this is not the case for everyone, that they have an experience like this. But I am grateful that my body has been able to both feel supported throughout pregnancy and continue to feel pretty, like I said, much like normal, pretty much like how I did before pregnancy. So if you have questions around anything I've talked about or around pregnancy or around fertility, like I said, I don't know everything. I can only share my own experience, which is why I love the podcast, because it is truly sharing my own experience, not ever making you feel like you have to also agree with my experience or believe everything I say or practice it on your own. But again, it's my experience and I can only share from that. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, please reach out to me. I am very passionate about this topic, and I'm very passionate about how we can better support our bodies and just have a level of awareness around what we can do to support our bodies during pregnancy that is just not openly communicated when you go to that first doctor's appointment after finding out you're pregnant. I just felt like there was a lack of education and a lack of even acknowledgement that some of these things could make a difference, because we never want to assume that what works for one person will work for another. But I'm like, women have been having babies for thousands of years and our bodies were created to do this. Like, why is there not more definite research around it or definite, support that we can have around it? And so hopefully, if you are also experiencing this too, you've noticed some of these things have improved. But I of course would love to hear what has helped you the most during pregnancy and helped you feel your best, because it's different for everyone. And I'm always open to trying new things and hearing different concepts and ideas just to support your overall body. So let's go ahead and close today's episode in prayer. So dear Lord, just thank you for today, and thank you for the opportunity to share more about my experience of pregnancy with other people. I just ask that this resonates with someone. I also pray for those who are maybe struggling to conceive right now, and that they just feel you around them and their relationship like a blanket all the time, and that they feel that comfort and that support, and that that you just work a miracle in them and in their bodies, and that you prepare them for that miracle, and that they just feel, like I said, that sense of comfort from you and from those people around them. I know that can be such a sensitive topic and a sensitive thing to experience, and I just pray that they feel supported from the people that they trust around them to share what's going on. And Lord, I also pray for the safety of everyone listening, and that they just are able to really both feel safe in their body, but also feel safe in their environment. And if that's not the case, that you kind of direct them in the way that will lead them to that security and that safety, or give them an opportunity to feel safe that maybe is something they never expected to happen for them. Finally, I just want to thank you for this platform and the ability to connect with so many incredible women on different topics around how we support our health, and that I just continue to keep that on the forefront of my mind and utilize this podcast for good and for supporting the greater health of whoever is listening. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right, so if you're interested in following along with my life outside of the podcast, you can find me at Nourish with Bailey on Instagram. Otherwise, all of my information is in the description of today's episode. Never hesitate to reach out to me, get connected with me. If you're interested in the blood work piece of supporting your health or taking more of a functional medicine approach, again, all the details of that will be down below. This is the last, January through February of the last couple months, I'm taking on blood work clients. And I share that because I've been doing a lot of that recently, and having women kind of reach that like aha moment absolutely lights me up and fills me with so much joy that I can provide an answer for someone. Not saying I always have all the answers, but can provide at least a direction for women to go in, or men, if they want to get their labs looked at. It's just been a really, really positive addition to what I do. And the more that I hear women's testimonies around other experiences that they've had and the value they've gained from it, just really, it means a lot. So that's why I share that. And with baby coming, like I've talked about, in mid-March, fingers crossed, I will be taking off 9-ish weeks. And so I just wanted to put that out there. If that's something you're considering, again, it was so valuable for me to do, kind of to identify what I needed for that prenatal care, but also to understand my body on a deeper level in the sense of hormones and your thyroid function and my liver function, nutrient deficiencies. It was just pretty impactful for me. So wanted to just put that opportunity out there. Again, all the details for everything is always in the description of today's episode. And with that, I will talk to you again next Wednesday. Bye.